Have you ever paused to think about what it truly means to age with grace and purpose? What happens when you find yourself grappling with loneliness, loss, and the inevitable passage of time? This video isn't just about getting older, it's about the powerful journey of embracing the later years of life and living them to their fullest. You'll meet Jack Thompson, a 62-year-old man who has faced both the joys and heartaches that come with aging. From the loss of his beloved wife to the growing sense of isolation as his children build their own lives, Jack's story is a deeply personal one, yet it resonates with so many of us as we face similar challenges and triumphs as we grow older. Why should you stick around and watch this video to the end? Because Jack's experience is not just his own, it's a reflection of the universal experiences that many of us will inevitably face as we age. Through his journey, you'll learn how to cope with loss, find new connections, and build a fulfilling life even in solitude. You'll discover the invaluable wisdom he gained from his relationship with Laura, a woman who entered his life in unexpected ways and helped him navigate the complexities of aging with strength and resilience. Additionally, Jack's story sheds light on the tough decisions seniors often have to make, like the difficult choice of moving to a nursing home, and how to approach these decisions with peace, confidence, and an open heart. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with a deeper understanding of how to cherish the relationships that matter most, embrace independence, and take full control of your life as you grow older. Whether you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, Jack's story will inspire you to make the most of your later years, no matter the obstacles life may present. Don't miss out on the chance to gain valuable insights from someone who has lived through it all and emerged even stronger. If you haven't already, I recommend subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. Your support means the world to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading these important lessons by liking and sharing them with others. If you connect with the theme of this video, please leave a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now let's dive into the story. I had always imagined retiring at a time when I could finally relax and enjoy the fruits of my labor. I had planned for it meticulously, knowing that the future would eventually come. But, as life often does, it threw me an unexpected curveball. I had to retire earlier than I had anticipated. Thankfully, I had always been mindful of my spending, keeping a tight grip on my finances and saving for a rainy day. So financially, I was managing okay. But there was something I hadn't planned for, the heavy silence that now filled my life. There was a time when my family was my world. My son Adam and my daughter Emily both had their own families now. Their lives were stable, and they were flourishing in their ways. I was proud of them, of course, but a part of me longed for the days when the house was full of laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Over time, though, the house grew quieter. The energy that once filled it slowly dissipated. A few years ago, Sarah, my beloved wife, passed away after a long illness. That loss left a hole in my heart that never seemed to heal. As time passed, my children, who were once so close, became more absorbed in their own busy lives. They visited less and less, and with each passing day, I found myself alone more often than not. One afternoon, I sat on the sofa, surrounded by the stillness of my empty house. The silence seemed to swallow me whole. I could hear nothing but the beating of my own heart and the distant hum of the world outside. The rooms, once filled with life and warmth, now seemed to echo the loneliness I felt. I felt it deep within my bones, a pang of bitterness I couldn't ignore. As I sat there trying to push those feelings aside, the phone rang. It was Adam. His voice came through urgent and hurried. "Dad, are you staying home tonight? There's some urgent work, and I might not be able to come by," he said, his tone laced with worry. I felt a flicker of disappointment in my chest, but I tried to suppress it. I understood. Adam had a family of his own, a busy job, and a life to lead. He had responsibilities. I didn't want to burden him with my loneliness, so I replied with a forced calmness. "It's fine, Adam. Don't worry about me. Just take care of your things. I'm all right here." I hung up, feeling a hollow ache inside me. It was as if the world had slipped away, leaving me behind. I had worked so hard all those years, put my heart and soul into providing for my family, only to find that now, in my retirement, with Sarah gone and the children living their own lives, I was left to face the quiet alone. The emptiness seemed to deepen with each passing day. The following day, my neighbor John stopped by for a visit. Part 2. John and I were around the same age, and we had always enjoyed our conversations. But this time, there was an unspoken heaviness in the air. He sat down beside me, and after a few moments of silence, he sighed deeply. "So, it's just you here now, huh?" he he asked, looking around the room, his eyes scanning the emptiness that mirrored my feelings. I nodded without saying much. Same for me, he continued, his voice tinged with a sadness that struck me to my core. My wife is busy, and the kids are doing their own thing. I could feel the sorrow in his words, and it mirrored the aching emptiness I was experiencing. John's words about loneliness at this stage of life felt like a cold, hard truth that I couldn't escape. You have to think about it. What if one day you're all alone? He asked, his question cutting through the stillness like a knife. I could feel my heart drop into my stomach. The thought of being completely alone in this big house, with no one to talk to, no one to check in on me, filled me with dread. His question haunted me, repeating over and over in my mind. What if I'm left alone? What will I do? I tried to shake it off, but it was there, haunting me. A few days later, Emily came by with her son, Noah. She brought some of his favorite childhood dishes, perhaps hoping it would lead to a longer visit. But as soon as Emily stepped through the door, she rushed to explain. Dad, I'm just dropping by to let Noah see you for a bit, but then I have to go pick up Tom. Her hurried tone, her eyes darting back and forth, and the worried look on Noah's face broke my heart. I tried to smile to hide the ache in my chest, but it was impossible. Go ahead. Take care of what you need to do. I'm fine here, I said, though the words felt empty as soon as they left my lips. Emily barely had time to sit down before she was up again, rushing out the door with Noah in tow. I stood at the door, watching them leave, the sound of their footsteps slowly fading away. The house felt even emptier now, the silence more oppressive. I couldn't stop the tears that welled up in my eyes, nor the feeling of abandonment that settled heavily in my heart. That night, as I lay in bed, the question from earlier echoed in my mind with painful clarity. What should I do if I'm left alone? I couldn't continue like this. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep drifting through this quiet, lonely existence. A few days later, I met up with John at the park for a walk. We sat on a bench watching people go by, their lives moving in a blur around us. I turned to John, my heart heavy with all that had been weighing on me. You were right about everything, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. At our age, if we're left alone, how do we manage? John nodded in understanding, his eyes soft with empathy. I've thought about it too, he replied. There are a few things we need to prepare for in advance. We can't wait until the last moment to worry. John said firmly, his voice steady, almost reassuring. The most important thing is to make sure we're financially stable. We need enough to cover food and essentials so we're not left struggling. I nodded in agreement. The truth was undeniable. Without financial security, aging could become a brutal battle. I had always prided myself on being careful with my money, but I knew now that I needed to think about what the future would hold. Medical expenses, emergencies, and the unknowns that always seem to arise at the most inconvenient times. John continued, with no spouse or kids nearby, it's up to us to take care of ourselves. Those words rang true. It was a hard truth, but it was the reality we both faced. I felt a surge of determination rise within me. Maybe the future didn't have to be so bleak. Maybe there was still time to prepare, to take control, to build a plan that would allow me to live out my later years with dignity and purpose. But it was clear that I had to act now, before the silence became more than I could bear. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment one below to let me know that you are still here with me. Living alone, you come to realize that, despite all the love and care from your children, they can't always be there for you when you need them most. It's a hard truth, one that hits you like a cold gust of wind on an otherwise warm day. We have to become more independent, he said, and those words echoed deeply within me. We have to take care of ourselves, stay active, and never isolate ourselves. It was as if he was speaking directly to me. For so long, I had devoted my life to my children, caring for them, putting their needs before my own. But in doing so, I had neglected the quality of my own life. The years had passed, and all I had to show for it was a life spent in front of the television, sitting in a room that felt more like a prison than a home. I was living, but not truly living, and the isolation was slowly taking its toll on me. The realization struck me like a slap in the face. I couldn't keep living this way. My health, my happiness, everything depended on me changing. It was so easy to sink into the comfort of routine and let time slip away unnoticed. But I knew deep down that this path would only lead to one thing, a slow decline into poor health and loneliness. I couldn't let that happen, so I chose to change my habits, no matter how daunting it seemed at first. Each morning I started walking to the park, just a short walk, but it was something. It was a step toward regaining control of my life. Then, in the evenings, I found solace in the community center, playing chess and chatting with other seniors. At first, it was awkward, and I felt the weight of loneliness trying to pull me back into my shell. But little by little, I built new friendships, and I could feel my life becoming richer and more fulfilling. Part 3. Still, despite all the new activities, there was a gnawing emptiness that refused to go away. Every night as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the same question haunted me. Who will be there for me when I'm sick? When I need someone to talk to or help me through the hard times? The silence in the room seemed to amplify those fears, and the more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. I had always been content to live alone, but now I couldn't shake the thought that maybe I needed someone by my side. Not to take care of me, but simply to be there, to share in the quiet moments and the burdens of getting older. But then a wave of guilt would rush over me. My wife Sarah had only passed recently. I felt like any step toward finding companionship again would be a betrayal of her memory. How could I ever let go of her presence, her love? Yet, as much as I tried to ignore it, the loneliness within me grew stronger with each passing day. One day, after much hesitation, I found the courage to talk to my old friend John. He listened with a knowing look in his eyes, his silence speaking volumes. "I get it," he said softly, his voice filled with compassion. After my wife passed, I felt the same way. We don't need someone to depend on, but someone to talk to, someone to share the highs and lows of life with, someone to support us when we need it most. His words gave me a kind of comfort that I hadn't realized I was missing. He was right. I wasn't looking for someone to replace Sarah, but simply to ease the ache of solitude that had been growing inside me. Slowly, I began to open my heart to the idea of finding a companion, and that's when I met Margaret. She was an elderly woman who also lived alone, and her vibrant, optimistic personality was a breath of fresh air. We quickly bonded over our shared experiences of living far from our children and the deep loneliness that came with it. Margaret had a spirit of adventure, a zest for life that I hadn't felt in years. She was always out exploring, visiting new places, and doing things that reminded me how much I had been missing out on. Her presence brought joy back into my life, and our conversations, filled with laughter and understanding, became something I looked forward to every day. As time went on, our relationship deepened. We began to do more together, grocery shopping, cooking meals, taking walks in the park, and just enjoying each other's company. We never really labeled our connection, but it didn't need labeling. The bond we shared was enough. Margaret became my companion in every sense of the word, and our home, which had once felt so empty, was now filled with warmth, conversation, and the gentle rhythm of two lives intertwined. One night, when I fell ill with a fever, I was reminded just how much having someone by your side can mean. Margaret was by my side instantly, her concern for me shining through in every gesture. She rushed to get me medicine and cool me down with a damp cloth, her hands gentle yet firm in their care. She called Adam, urging him to take me to the hospital. When Adam arrived and saw Margaret so diligently caring for me, he was surprised. His worry for me was evident, but I reassured him, smiling faintly. "I didn't want to worry you. You've got your own life, and Margaret takes excellent care of me." Adam seemed torn, but his gratitude was clear. He insisted on taking me to the doctor, and though it was just a fever, the simple act of being cared for made all the difference. That night, as I lay in bed, I watched Margaret take care of everything. The house was no longer just a place where I existed. It had become a home filled with love, tenderness, and companionship. The emptiness that once defined my life had been replaced by something far more meaningful. I realized that the companionship we shared wasn't about replacing what I had lost, but about finding a new kind of love, one that was quiet, steady, and comforting. It wasn't the passionate love of youth, but it was a love that brought peace, security, and warmth in the twilight of life. Margaret was no longer just a companion. She was the light that had pierced through my darkness, reminding me that, even in old age, we don't have to be alone. As time passed, the complexities of life began to unfold in unexpected ways. One day, as I was quietly going about my daily routine, Margaret received a phone call that would change everything. Her son, her beloved child, was getting married, and he wanted her to come back and live with him and his new family. When Margaret shared the news with me, a surge of bitterness flooded my heart, but I fought to keep my emotions in check. I smiled weakly, trying to mask the sadness that was slowly consuming me. "Your son is getting married. That's wonderful news," I said, trying to sound supportive. "It's a good time for you to be with your children." But as Margaret looked at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty. I could see the internal battle waging within her. Her voice, barely above a whisper, betrayed her emotions. "But I've gotten used to being here with you," she said, the weight of her words hanging in the air like an unspoken plea. I knew, at that moment, that her heart was breaking, torn between the pull of family and the bond we had shared. The quiet intimacy of our life together had become a comfort to both of us, and the thought of being uprooted stirred a deep, deep ache within me. Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady my thoughts, knowing I needed to be the one to make this easier for her. "You need to be with your son. As a mother, that's where you belong. I'll be fine here on my own. Don't worry about me," I said, though my voice trembled slightly as I spoke. Inside, though, the weight of those words felt like a heavy stone lodged in my chest. I wanted her to stay. I wanted to hold on to the warmth and the comfort of our shared time, but I knew, deep down, that this was what she needed. After days of quiet contemplation, Margaret decided to return to her son. I drove her to the bus stop, my heart a mixture of love, sadness, and resignation. Watching her board the bus, I felt as though a piece of my heart was being left behind. As the bus pulled away, I stood there frozen, feeling as though the world had suddenly gone silent, leaving me in a hollow emptiness. Part 4. Returning to an empty house, the silence was deafening. It was a loneliness I hadn't anticipated, a feeling more profound than I could have ever imagined. I found myself grappling with the reality of what many elderly people must face: solitude. The thought of being alone in my later years began to seep into my mind, and tears welled up as I muttered to myself, struggling to make sense of the void that had overtaken me. Margaret's departure had left a hole that nothing seemed to fill. Each morning, I continued with my routine, exercising and meeting with old friends, but the absence of her companionship was palpable. My children Adam and Emily still checked in on me, but their lives were full, and I didn't want to burden them with the weight of my loneliness. They had their own families and their responsibilities, and though they made the effort, I could sense the distance between us. Every time they called, I reassured them, saying I was fine, but deep down, I felt the painful truth. The loneliness was growing, sinking deeper into my soul. It was one afternoon at the community center, surrounded by familiar faces but feeling more isolated than ever, that I overheard a conversation that would change the course of my future. A group of people was discussing the possibility of moving into a nursing home. It struck me like a bolt of lightning. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe this was the place where I could find peace and some semblance of connection. The next day, I called Adam, hoping he would understand. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before he spoke, his voice full of concern. "Dad, are you sure you want to move into a nursing home? Doesn't that place feel cold?" His words made me pause, but I knew what I had to say. "Adam, it's not about the coldness. It's about finding a place where I can truly be at peace for the long term. You and Emily have your own busy lives. I don't want to be a burden to you. At least in a nursing home, there are people around. I won't be so alone." Adam hesitated, and I could hear the worry in his voice as he promised to discuss it with Emily. A few days later, they came over, sitting on the couch, their faces drawn with concern. Emily spoke first, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad, we understand that it's hard for you to be on your own, but are you sure a nursing home is the right place? What if you feel even more isolated there?" Their concern warmed my heart, but I knew I had to stand firm. "You don't need to worry about me. I've thought this through. I need a place where I can enjoy my later years in peace. A nursing home isn't the worst option. It's not perfect, but it's better than being alone here. You both have your own lives to live, and I don't want to impose on that." Their silence spoke volumes, but after a long pause, they agreed. "Dad, if this is what you want, we'll respect your choice, but we'll visit you often," Adam promised. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't completely alone in this decision. A few months later, I moved into a nursing home in the suburbs. It was a beautiful place with flower gardens, activity rooms, and plenty of other seniors around my age. On my first day, I took a walk around the yard and met Mr. Robinson, a long-term resident. He welcomed me with a warm smile and offered to show me around. He introduced me to a few new faces, making the transition a little easier. That evening, as I lay in my new bed, gazing out the window at the night sky, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't home, and it wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a new beginning. I had made a few new friends, and the prospect of companionship, however small, eased the weight of my loneliness. 6 months passed, and I found my routine. I ate regularly, exercised, and spent time socializing with my new friends. I no longer faced the crushing solitude I had once feared. I had found a new rhythm, a new sense of purpose. Though it was not the life I had imagined, it was one I could live with. Peaceful, connected, and, for the first time in a long while, filled with hope. Life had become a peaceful rhythm, filled with the simplicity of small pleasures, playing chess, enjoying the quiet moments, and chatting with friends. Those small daily routines had become my sanctuary. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of comfort and security that had been absent for years. Adam and Emily, my children, still called frequently, their voices filled with concern about my adjustment to living alone. They seemed to worry endlessly, even though I assured them every time, "I'm doing well, nothing's missing. You don't need to worry about me." I tried to ease their minds, but deep down I knew they couldn't fully understand the peace I had found in solitude. I had learned to embrace it, to appreciate it, to feel grounded in it. But then, one afternoon, the world as I knew it shifted. After a quiet lunch, I sat in the sun, feeling the warmth on my face, letting the simplicity of the moment wash over me. The phone rang. As I answered, I heard Adam's voice crackling through, filled with urgency. There was a tremor in his tone that made my chest tighten. "Dad, I've got some bad news," he said, his voice barely controlled. "Mrs. Robinson was in a car accident, and she's in the hospital." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment Toby below to let me know that you are still here with me. The words hit me like a physical blow. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The phone nearly slipped from my hand as shock paralyzed me. I had to steady myself, sitting on the edge of the chair, struggling to process the gravity of what he was saying. "What happened? How is she?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper, the panic beginning to take root. Adam's voice faltered as he spoke again. "I just got the news and rushed over. Do you want to come to the hospital?" I felt as though the ground beneath me had disappeared. The news of Mrs. Robinson, someone who had been a constant in my life, someone